When I was 12 to 14 years old, I used to sleep in the living room. My brother and I fought too much when we shared a room. My parents promised they'd build onto the house eventually and give me my own room, but it couldn't wait. I moved all my stuff into the living room. The living room was at the front of the house, near the street. The street wasn't a busy one. We lived in the mountains. We were far away from civilization. But it was paved, so people drove by occasionally. It's a pretty safe area and almost no one ever walks by there. It was the middle of the summer, and we never had an air conditioner in the house. We used to leave all the windows open all day and night instead. It's not safe to do this, but it actually kept the house pretty cool, even during the day if you use fans as well. And because hardly no one ever passed by there, and there was pretty much no crime in my area, we assumed it was safe. Anyway, everyone was in bed and I was trying to go to sleep. All the windows were open, including the one that faced the street that was less than a foot away from my head. But I couldn't sleep. I got this really creepy feeling, like someone was watching me through the window next to my bed. I hadn't heard a noise, so I was pretty sure I was overreacting. I was about 13 years old during this time, and I was a scaredy cat, easily frightened in the dark. So I figured it was just something I had to shrug off. My mind was playing tricks on me. But I couldn't, so I covered my head with the blanket, so if someone was staring at me, they couldn't see me anymore. I know it's ridiculous logic. The window was open, so they could do all kinds of creepy things to me, much worse than staring. But all I was frightened by was the thought of eyes watching me during that time. I just wanted to block out the eyes from seeing me. My heart kept going faster though. I still felt uneasy and I could feel my breathing becoming labored. I kept trying to tell myself to calm down. I was breathing so fast that I was starting to wheeze. And then I realized it wasn't me wheezing. I held my breath, and the deep breathing in and out next to my ear kept going, even though I was no longer breathing. It was rapid and shuddering, less than 12 inches from my face, and I could still feel the eyes still on me. His breathing was so loud now, I couldn't believe anyone could breathe that loudly. I still didn't want to admit to myself that someone might be there, so I just told myself that somehow I had scared myself so badly I was hallucinating someone staring at me and breathing really hard. I kept trying to talk myself down, trying to tell myself to calm down, but I couldn't. I was paralyzed because of my fear, paralyzed that the guy would grab me through the window because he was so close. I didn't know what I'd do if he did because I had no weapon. I wanted to run to my parents' room. We had thick walls, and they'd never be able to hear me when I screamed for them from the living room. I figured that I had to at least scream for my dad. Maybe he could hear me this time, and he'd come out and check things out. No one would be there, and I'd realized that all my fear was for nothing. So I started screaming. "Dad! Dad! Help me! Come here!" My dad never heard me, but the guy outside my window did. He started cackling evilly and saying to me loudly,
"Don't worry. I'll be your daddy. I'm right here. I'll be your daddy."
And his laugh sounded like he was going to murder me. I jumped out of bed, screaming, and ran to my parents' room, which was locked. I banged on the door. They opened it and were irritated that I woke them up. We never checked to see if the guy was still outside, and I guess my dad didn't believe me. But it was terrifying. And now, at 30 years old, I'm still scared remembering that wheezing. As a teen, there was a place that a lot of people my age used to go to. It was basically a large park, and we could spend our weekends sat there getting drunk. Underage drinking was rife in our area, and there'd be about 40 people from all over the town at this park. Close to the park was a pub and a small shop. Me and a couple of my friends used to sneak into the pub to use the toilet, because no girl likes having to pee outside. It was a Friday and about 9 p.m., pitch black, and I'd been drinking and needed a wee, so I walked to the pub. I'd just come out of the pub and a young couple, maybe about 24 years old, came over talking to me, asking why I was in the pub because I was obviously too young. I told them that I was just using the loo, and what of it, expecting them to have a go at me. But they didn't. They were nice and started asking me about myself, telling me I was beautiful and things like that. The woman kept stroking my hair, saying I was lucky to have such nice long hair. Now I thought this was odd, but I was drunk and thought, fuck it, they're just a drunk couple being nice. The female suddenly said, "Wait here," and they both went into the shop at the side of the pub. I thought about taking off, but by that point a few of my friends had started walking up from the park and were headed towards me, so I waited. The couple came out with a bag of things for me and thrust it into my hand, saying, "Hey, we got you some things. You deserve them." Inside was a bottle of WKD, 10 packs of cigs, a Kinder Egg, a huge pack of crisps, and a bat and ball set for kids. It was so awkward, but I said thank you, and by that point my mates were around me asking who the couple were. They said they needed to go, but smiled, hugged me, and said if I wanted more to come back next week on my own. Now, despite having a good time drinking and eating and then playing drunken bat and ball with my friends later, I realized how odd this encounter was. I didn't think too much about it though and just forgot about it. I did see them, but never actually went over to them. I thought they were weird, but week after week I'd see them hanging around outside the pub and shop, always looking like they were just hanging out there. I ended up getting grounded for something and couldn't go out for a month. When I did finally get back out and went to the park, there were all sorts of gossip from the other groups at the park, talking about a girl who had been forced into a threesome with a couple she had met in the area. I never met the girl, but the story was that she met this nice couple who bought her things and ended up offering her a ride home. But they didn't take her home. Apparently, they threatened her with things like telling her parents that she was doing bad things. And since they painted the picture of them being this lovely young couple, I can only imagine how they manipulated her. It's only later I realized that forcing someone into a threesome is raped, and she was raped. I haven't thought about this in years. It happened to me when I was 15, and I'm now nearly 25. It's only reading through some of these stories on this sub that it actually came back to me, and it makes me sick to my stomach how I put myself in that situation, and how very lucky I am that nothing happened to me. Just a little background check. I'm a female and was 12 when this all started, and I lived in a very calm part of my estate in Ireland. My mom is involved too, but not as much as I am. So on to the story now. It was 12 a.m., and had just turned Christmas Day when we got a knock on our door. I was taught not to open the door to strangers, especially when it's 12 a.m. So I just ignored it and hoped that whoever it was would just go away. About 3 minutes later, I heard another knock, but this time it was like a huge bang at the door, and I was terrified and didn't know what to do, so by instinct, I went and got my mom to answer. When she answered, this drunk Romanian guy who had a very scary and scruffy beard, and he was wearing a white hoodie, was just standing there and asked, "Can I walk your dog? I have my dog with me, so she'll be fine?" And my mom, of course, said no. I was a bit away from the door, but that's all I heard him say. My mother kept politely asking for him to go away, and when she had enough, she closed the door very quickly. The next morning, I was sitting having my breakfast, and my mom brings up the incident to my dad. So, me being me, I started eavesdropping and took off one of my headphones. I was really scared because that's the guy who stalks me in the bushes while walking Molly, our dog. When she said that, my heart sank so deep into my chest that it started to hurt. So you'd think that's the end of it. No, it wasn't. Fast forward 3 years and I'm home alone watching TV upstairs in my room, when I had just had this sudden urge to look outside my window. And let me tell you, I was terrified. The same man was standing in my empty driveway, looking up into my bedroom. I got so freaked out and without hesitation immediately closed my curtains over. No more than 10 seconds later, there was a huge bang at my front door, and I hear the handle being played with, and I was fucking paralyzed. When he finally stopped with the door handle, I heard the windows downstairs shatter into shards, and I heard him climb in. I sprinted into my bathroom and locked the door behind me, bringing my phone with me. I hear really fast thumps go up the stairs and hear my bedroom door open, and once he realizes I'm not there, he immediately goes for the bathroom door handle. He starts trying to kick the door down and was screaming that he would rape and kill me. I called 999, and within 5 minutes I hear, "Put your hands up! Do it now!" I was so fucking terrified that it took me almost 30 minutes to get out of the bathroom. The officer told me that he had a backpack, and in there they found dildos, condoms, a rope, a gag, bleach, and a meat cleaver. I want to add that if the officers had arrived 5 minutes later, then I don't know what would have happened to me, as within 5 kicks he would have kicked the door down, and I don't know what would have happened to me if he did get in. I used to own the most sweetest-natured, loving, and loyal golden retriever who loved nothing more than people and food. About 2 years ago, we were both walking back from a long dog walk through some woods on the outskirts of the town where I live. On the edge of these woods is a large housing estate that has a bit of a bad reputation, and a supermarket that I was going to stop off at on our way home. To get to the supermarket, we had to walk through this path that's quite isolated, and then underneath an underpass. Along the way, there were a few discarded McDonald's food wrappers that my dog tried to get at, being a typical retriever. We got to the supermarket, and I left him in a shaded area outside. Now, I have done this countless times, and in the 10 years I've owned my dog, I've never had an issue. I took his lead off and took that inside with me. I always did this as my reasoning was that no one would ever be able to drag him away if he didn't have a lead on. I bought 1 or 2 things inside the store so I was gone for maybe 5 minutes or so. As I was paying, I just had this gut-wrenching feeling that I had to get out and go, as something was wrong. I literally ran out of the store and found that my dog was gone. The car park was pretty empty, and as it was a boiling hot day, there wasn't any people around to ask if they had seen him. As this supermarket was at the top of a hill, I had a good viewpoint, and I saw a flash of gold that I knew was him moving through the path leading towards the woods that we walked through earlier. I ran after him, thinking he had gone back to eat the food wrappers he had sniffed at earlier, so at this point I wasn't panicking too much. I got to the food wrappers, and there was no sign of him. That's where the panic set in. I started screaming his name, and I could hear his panicked howling and barking coming from the underpass that led to the path to the woods. I started running and reached the entrance of the woods. There in the middle of the clearing was my dog with a rope around his neck. Surrounding him was about 5 or 6 teenagers who looked like trouble, all male, about 15 or 16 years old. 2 of these little shits had their smartphones in their hands filming him. Another one had what looked like a large aerosol can and a lighter. Another, some sort of sharp object. They were all laughing, yelling, and jeering at him as one of these kids were prodding him with some sort of metal pole. I started yelling and screaming at them to give me my dog back, and that took them by surprise, so my dog managed to break free and ran towards me. I dread to think what these creeps were planning to do with him. Being a short female, I wasn't going to stick around and see what had happened next, so I grabbed my dog, and we both ran. I've never forgiven myself for allowing that to happen to my dog, so don't make the same mistake I made, and never leave your dog unattended, no matter how quick you think you are going to be. The window was open, so they could do all kinds of creepy things to me, much worse than staring. But all I was frightened by was the thought of eyes watching me during that time. I just wanted to block out the eyes from seeing me. My heart kept going faster though. I still felt uneasy and I could feel my breathing becoming labored. I kept trying to tell myself to calm down. And because hardly no one ever passed by there, and there was pretty much no crime in my area, we assumed it was safe. Anyway, everyone was in bed and I was trying to go to sleep. All the windows were open, including the one that faced the street that was less than a foot away from my head. But I couldn't sleep. I got this really creepy feeling, like someone was watching me through the window next to my bed. When I was 12 to 14 years old, I used to sleep in the living room. My brother and I fought too much when we shared a room. My parents promised they'd build onto the house eventually and give me my own room, but it couldn't wait. I moved all my stuff into the living room. The living room was at the front of the house, near the street. The street wasn't a busy one. We lived in the mountains. We were far away from civilization. But it was paved, so people drove by occasionally. It's a pretty safe area and almost no one ever walks by there. It was the middle of the summer, and we never had an air conditioner in the house. We used to leave all the windows open all day and night instead. It's not safe to do this, but it actually kept the house pretty cool, even during the day if you use fans as well. I hadn't heard a noise, so I was pretty sure I was overreacting. I was about 13 years old during this time, and I was a scaredy cat, easily frightened in the dark. So I figured it was just something I had to shrug off. My mind was playing tricks on me. but I couldn't, so I covered my head with the blanket, so if someone was staring at me, they couldn't see me anymore. I know it's ridiculous logic,